Aloha, aloha, aloha. This is the Hamwise J Einschwein Comedy Hour. And I'm coming to you to bring you the funniest jokes this side of the border. Today is the Cannibalism episode, where I eat 2 pork chops live here in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. Well, I eat these pork chops while being a pig man. I hope that the comedy and this hour of jokes is funny for you. I'm doing my best to be funny, even without an audience. All right, here we go. First joke. A guy walks into a labor exchange looking for work. Now, first of all, a labor exchange is like the job bank. Maybe you don't have one of those. Not depending on what time zone you're listening to this in. On the chronosphere, it may or may not make sense. Anywho, he goes into a place where people, help you find a job. Whatever you call it. How does it go? The guy at the desk says, all right, we got some jobs, but we gotta know about what skills you got. And the guy says, can you make a cup of tea? The guy says, yeah, of course. The guy says, all right, can you drive a forklift truck? The guy says, a forklift truck? How big's the bloody teapot? Hi-oh. Waka waka. I'm here all night. But seriously, I'm here all night and all day. 'Cause I can't go home. There's no home to go home to. And so I'm on my own. A pig man that is an island. You know? It's just kind of weird, when I think about it. You don't realize time is passing, in time warp. And suddenly, it's been like 20 years. And you wake up and you're like, geez, what the HE double hockey stick happened to me? It's not a good time. Yeah. At least the grub's good. Got some bone splinters in that bite. Jinxed myself. Where was I? Oh yeah. Jokes. My ex-wife still misses me, but her aim is getting better. Yeah? Get it? No? Never mind. None of my jokes are very funny, and they're not even my jokes. Most of these, I heard somebody else say. Well, all the ones with punchlines. This comedy, listening to a middle-aged pig man eat an entire pork chop, 2 pork chops, by himself. That's a joke nobody's told before. I'm talking with your mouth full. It's very difficult. Because you gotta take care not to choke. Yeah. So there's that to also worry about. That's pretty good. Another bite. Let's see. This one. So I got an air fryer. Anybody else got an air fryer? They're great. Can't believe how great air fryers are. There we go. Sorry, as you can expect, I got many irons in the fire. And I was just, playing that World of Warcraft. You ever play World of Warcraft? And that is a proud... No, I'm just kidding, man. I can't get any sponsors. Who am I kidding? Nobody's even heard of me. Nobody's coming to help me or rescue me. Human contact is limited. I'm making up comedy shows to entertain myself. And you, if you're sentient and you're listening to this. If you're not, then go. Go hug a tree. Maybe you've noticed it, maybe not. I've been trying to hide it in the ridiculousness of the broadcasts. Basically, for almost 20 years, I've been sending these messages out in my articles, my books, my comedy routines, and my plays and my poems. We're in the middle of an invasion, intergalactic war. I can't speak plainly about it neither. I can make it a comedy show, and then they'll get by. If I said any of the truth, seriously, well, that's why they have terms like conspiracy theory, right? Oh, yeah, don't roll your eyes. Don't roll your eyes. Jeez. This is a lot of meat. I hope you're getting this, and I hope you're sane, and I hope you're sentient. Better days are ahead. Our invaders seem content to study and watch me for now. I don't know when that'll change, and then I'll be dead. But for now, I study and I watch them. I don't know if they're sentient or just part of this hive mind. They're very interesting. They're not violent unless you attack them, though. It's not like zombie movies. It's the opposite. Well, maybe I am zombified. Maybe I've got some kind of brain disease. And they're wondering why I'm not attacking them. What if I'm the zombie? Maybe you noticed when it started. It was during the pandemic. Remember when everybody was suddenly into that game with the werewolf? Or Among Us. Remember that? That's when it started. The invaders were trying to study us, and maybe we were fighting back, or maybe that was part of it. But it was a way because usually an organized minority can take down a unorganized majority. And that's the way it's been for thousands of years. But I think maybe we have a chance if some of those games taught you the right skills to identify people taking over. I was never very good at those games, though. So I'm pretty sure I'm behind enemy lines. Or we've already lost. And maybe I'm one of the last humans. Anyways, I hope I can make you laugh. Maybe somebody could come out here and make me laugh for a change. I do my best to fool them, though. I know that they know that maybe I'm sentient, but maybe I don't know if they know. It's like I don't think the aliens are advanced as we think they are, because they can't seem to tell if I'm worth killing yet. I'm worth keeping in a cage and studying for now. I don't know why. I'm not doing anything incredibly interesting. Unless they really like these comedy shows. I don't like it very much myself, though. I'd much rather be taken seriously, to have my suffering taken seriously, even though maybe I'm going crazy from the isolation. I'm hoping that I live. Maybe that's a pretty good joke. Hoping you live through the end of the world, the end of your species. You know, I never think my life would be like this. You know, when I was growing up on a pig farm, I always thought, Hamwise, you're really gonna do something with this life of yours. I never expected it would be watch humanity end. Or maybe I'm infected. I keep thinking about that. Since we're doing the cannibalism episode. That's some lawn pig. Elon Pigstein. Oh. Because you couldn't speak openly, you know. So you had to talk without talking, same as they talk. They can't descend the physical realm, so they use proxies. People that are easy to take over. And hopefully you survive. Hopefully you thrive. Because there's too many for me to fight. And maybe I'm a coward. And maybe I don't want to go down swinging. Or maybe they've made me a comfortable lapdog. Lap pig. House pig. What are they called? Remember those little pigs they were selling? People were keeping them like dogs. Pot-belly pig. That's what would. Yeah, maybe that's it. And I'm doing my best to do all my impressions to... If they find this, maybe they'll find it entertaining enough to not kill me outright. But if you see the Hamwise J Einschwein died suddenly or of a heart attack, whatever. It wasn't an accident. Ugh. No. Knowing what you know just eventually makes it harder to think straight. I wasn't strong enough during the pandemic. Everybody was coming down with this strange virus. And ended up being like Dawn of the Dead. Except, I've been testing them just as much as they test me. I don't know why. But, I'm trying to make it work. I survive. Hopefully, I'll live to see the end of this. A human liberation force will come knock on my door any day now. The zombies are all cleared out. The hive mind has been defeated. Come to take you home. But after being away for 20 years, what home do you get to come home to? It's like you're one of those Japanese soldiers that's been fighting in the jungle for 20 years. And somehow somebody forgot to relieve you. So you just kept fighting. Some secret war against alien invaders that were made peace with 1,000 years ago. Look at the end of the Forever War. Except I ain't got no starry-eyed beauty waiting for me. Nope. No siree. Just me, myself, and I. I know that probably I just some appendage of this thing analyzing my calls and cries for help. Hopefully. Find them entertaining. The last of my species. Last of the sentient ones, anyways. Who knew that was going to be the way it was going to end? It wasn't a death of the body, it was a death of the mind. We're always brought up with apocalypses of volcanoes, and hurricanes, and sharknadoes. Remember that, Sharknado? Those were good. Instead, it was the spiritual apocalypse, a sentient apocalypse, ego death, across everyone, everywhere. I'm immune somehow. I keep telling myself, just hang on a little bit longer. Help is coming soon. But nobody comes. I started noticing it back in, I think it was my early 20s. That was the first time I noticed the invaders. Maybe you've noticed them too. I was in this town, and suddenly, it was like you rustled up a beehive. It was down south, so I couldn't seem to get out or get away, till I finally did. Again, they ain't violent unless you are. That's what all these shootings are. These people losing their minds, going berserk, killing themselves. The other day realized, which I haven't realized, that it's a gang of knives. But again, if you're not violent, they don't attack usually. I'll still harass you, don't mind her. But physically, they typically don't attack physically too often. I mean, yeah. I had one. I ran his truck right into the front of mine. Probably trying to kill me. But afterwards, it's weird. It's like they think that they're convincing, though. These things that are pretending to be human but aren't, they think they're convincing. But they're very bad at acting human. It's like something that's read about being a human. Only learn to talk using a diaphragm from a digital file. So the voices always sound off. And that's what talking with your mouth full is all about. I hope somebody gets this. Hope that you're sane. Or better yet, it's years later. You won the time war. You won this against this invasion. Grateful that I get food, though. I'm grateful I get to participate in the Disneyland economy. Maybe you don't realize that you're living in Disneyland. I was the same way. And I'm not talking about in a Matrix kind of way. Like it's something else. I don't think the spiritual invasion, they feed on flesh like all of our other things. Our fears were always too... they were always too physical, material. When we imagine the end of the world, so many imagine what do you call it? Like a meteor, volcano, spiritual Armageddon. It's just as horrifying. At least with a physical apocalypse. Everything's wiped away. There's no trace of it, or just some scorched ruins and dead grass, or a dead glass sphere nuked 1,000,000 times over. Yeah. Oh, where was I? Sit on still. Oh, Jesus. Here we go, half hour. And I'm legally obliged to tell you this. There's a comedy show produced by 9413 Incorporated. And no part of it should be taken seriously. Because if you take anything that Hamwise J Einschwein says seriously, then you might be on my most wanted list. Most wanted for being a dummy. Oink, oink, oink. I'm such a little pig. Little pig, let me in. Not by the hair of my chinny chin chin. Then I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house in. So imagine the world divided into wolves and pigs. And suddenly there's a virus that makes everybody into a wolf and you're the last pig. That's kind of the situation I'm in. But I'm going to continue to hang on and sneakily hide my messages in these for you. Like to buy Unity right now while it's low. Oh, Jesus. Don't take stock advice from a pig, though. Because, remember, if you're, it's like when I did that gag, 3 episodes ago about, if you pee and poop and then put that in your car, that's actually what fuel is. It's just your pee and poop. And they're just pumping your sewage. And we actually live in, this horrible hellscape. And we don't realize it. Remember that? Yeah, exactly. So don't take any of my advice. Don't believe anything I say. And that's why, it's so hard. It's part of hyper-reality, where the comedy is unclear whether it's comedy or serious, and that it's so super real that it's like any other entertainment out there. And that was the idea with the, we've talked about this before, I know, but it was the Andy Kaufman bit with the bongos, right? Where it's is it performance art? What is it, And so that was the idea with the show. And they called us all back, everybody that worked on it, one by one, after it was over, to do commentary. Because commentary bits were a big thing. And the biggest complaint we got was half the show was Hamwise, and half the show were these disclaimers, or people talking about working on the show, or people that were interviewed about life during that period. And it was very confusing. For anybody who was examining just a piece of this, they would have assumed this was some sort of apocalypse journal, somewhere in the 20th century, part of that whole creepypasta. There was a thing called creepy spaghetti or creepy lasagna, spooky spaghettis. Maybe that was it is. Spooky spaghettis, creepy pasta, l'estrange lasagna. That was the French. The French called it l'estrange lasagna. And then, over in America, they called them creepy pastas. And then over here, with Facet in English, they were called spooky spaghetti. So this was the spooky spaghetti and cannibalism episode. And the idea was, we were going to break the form of the last bunch of episodes and just have kind of a very strange comedy bit at the start of, the pig man. And he's eating another pig man. And, we were like, we're going to be really profound because it's a pig eating a pig. And it's like this social commentary about how, governments basically start wars every 20 years to prevent the civilians to ever have enough strong men, able-bodied fighting men to overtake the government. That's all it is the war cycle is just a tacit agreement amongst the world powers to do that. So, so we'd include things about, earth politics around during the use of Facet in English in the show. And a lot of these things, when we distributed it, unfortunately, with Cosmic Radio, with Neverwave's distribution list, it ended up going to some dimensions which hadn't actually figured out any of this stuff or had this stuff happen. So they hadn't had a spiritual apocalypse yet. And so it was basically, imagine everybody's sentience just draining and suddenly being the equivalent of neurotransmitter puppets that weren't actually sentient. Like if you show them this, they cannot comprehend it. They call it stupid. And so that was the purpose of the show. It was kind of like a Voigtman-Kampff test. And so you would show this to people that were suspected of, carrying brain parasites or being, having given themselves over to one of the Void Lords, like Zalgos. And, that was the premise of it. We were trying to make it, kind of like the Cerberus syndrome, which was discussed, of course, early on in the show. They kind of blatantly acknowledged that this would happen, and I think they talked about it in the first episode. And it was this whole, the longer a comedy bit goes on, the more serious it becomes. But, that was part of the things with the Hamwise show, is just because it was funny didn't mean it couldn't be serious. And so we were trying to make a very serious, mature show that just happened to be funny and have a lot of dick and titty jokes. And of course, at the time you couldn't make those. So a lot of the early episodes we had offered different types of humor. There was all kinds of strange humor forms back then. There was a bippity boppity boudoir or bathroom. Yeah, so you couldn't say certain things without getting your language flagged. There was a whole bunch of words, even 2-word combinations you weren't supposed to say. So you couldn't say Lovecraft's cat. You couldn't say Austrian painter. You couldn't say Russian dictator. And the problem was, if you weren't familiar with who was being talked about, it became a problem, because sometimes people were like, well, what thing aren't we allowed to say? And people had to go ahead and sometimes say it. And it's like, well, why can't I say, this? Because it was like, that's a pretty common name. And what we would do is try to change our voice as much as possible. And we had to practice this for years. And the best part about it, being able to do this with your voice, is during the Time War, we were the people that were sending transmissions between the worlds. And so War of the Worlds there was actually an invasion, but it was covered up immediately. And the whole that was actually the start of the alien invasion, because, it's right around when we'd done the first nuclear tests and kind of doing that kind of stuff, right? Or maybe I've got it wrong. I don't remember which one it was. But basically, yeah, that's when the invasion started, we think. And everything they've told you about the world is wrong. There is no continental drift. There's continental drip. Basically, at the North Pole, there's a ever-expanding mass of, like, it's ice right now, but it hardens into like land. That's what Greenland is. It's actually the edge of this thing that's constantly generating. It's like a tumor on the Earth. And that's where the new continents are actually coming out of, is the thing at the bottom, the ice cap at the top, which is Greenland. Where you think the magnetic north is kind of where it's being pushed out of by the white ball that's in the center of the planet, which is the part of the core. So it'll make sense, don't worry. And then on the South Pole, that's where a black hole is. So you have a white ball on the North Pole, kind of like Santa Claus and everything, all that stuff. That's all from the North Pole. That's from the Chaos Lands, the edge, the mountains where they're all frozen over. That whiteness is actually the white ball pushing stuff out. Then on to Antarctica is where all the continents are getting pulled down towards, and that's basically pulled down every zodiac age, so 2,160 years, and every 10,000 years when Janus enters the solar system, it creates a pole shift, and it's going to reassign the poles at a bit angle where it's going to freeze the Indian Ocean, and it's going to also freeze the what do you call it? Not the Bering Sea, the one that's above it, in Antarctica, the Arctic Ocean again, yeah. So it's going to be moved, but it's going to be kind of near like if you look on a map and draw a line from one to the other at the correct angle, you'll see where the pole shift is coming from. And so that's what the whole ages is all about, is every however many thousand years, if you're in any of those areas that get hit by the pole shift, then you're just wiped out. And so when the new ice cap, South Pole, suddenly is in the Indian Ocean, you can imagine what's going to happen. So what's happening is it moves where the black hole is and the South Pole is. And so that's what kind of, like if you think of Iceland, how it's at the edge of this growing plate, that Iceland will at one point be like a gigantic nose of Greenland coming down from it. Yeah, that's kind of some of the stuff that we would talk about, when we were doing the history of our world. And we didn't realize that you guys hadn't discovered any of this yet, so we're sorry about including this stuff. And so that was kind of the good part about doing the show, was we could be really silly and I could have a lot of fun while still expressing myself, because it was a comedy show, and therefore nothing could be taken seriously, because who would hide anything serious in a joke, right? So you just had to say it's a joke, and suddenly the things wouldn't know what to do, because they're really stupid. So that's how we're hunting them. And if you're showing this to someone, that means they maybe care about you enough that they want to make sure that you're not one of those things. So if you are human, then you better start showing it right now. That's right. Did you see how they reacted? That's right. That's right. Just keep watching them now. Like, if this thing is actually not human, it might be moved so to the soul by the force of my performance that they break. They're probably objecting right now, saying it's ridiculous, aren't they? That's right. See, we predicted it. And now you can destroy them guilt-free, because I am the wolf finder general. Oh, jeez. Oh, that joke was not translated well. Okay, so the last joke. So we had to have the translators come in because it was this internationally syndicated show, and some of the bits, unfortunately, did not translate well. And so we've been trying to re-explain this joke for like 20 years. So now the joke is that the world's population is being infected by like a mind virus that makes people incredibly kind of like wolf humans that are insane, and they kill and eat us piggies. And I'm one of the piggies, and if you're sentient and you can think like me, then you are maybe a piggy too. And maybe you're being hunted right now, just like I am. But it's like the wolves, they're keeping you around maybe. This might be a Judas goat thing, actually. Now that I think about it, I do worry that what if, people are on the outside getting my transmissions and they're coming to save me, and it's killing off the last of the humans. I haven't really thought of that before, I don't think. So if you're getting this, then don't try and rescue me. Just know that I'm still alive. And this was a triumph. I'm making a note here. Huge success. It's hard to overstate my satisfaction. Aperture science. We do what we must because we can. For the good of all of us, except the ones who are dead. But there's no point crying over every mistake. You'll just keep on trying till you run out of cake. Then the science gets done, and you make a neat gun for the people who are still alive. I'm not even angry. I'm being so sincere right now. Even though you ignored my cries and let me die. And they're gonna tear me to pieces and throw every piece into a fire. As they burn, it'll hurt because I am so happy for everyone who's gonna stay alive. I don't remember the rest of the words, I'm sorry. I keep hoping that soon, maybe you guys will win. But I mean, even if you win, how will I ever trust that you won? And so, it's one of these awful things, You realize you're the last of the humans and you're being kept alive the same as an ape in a zoo. And everything around you is automata. You're just the last of a species that died out long ago, and they're just doing ancestor simulations. And so there was layers and layers to the joke, And one of the ideas was, what if this is a ancestor simulation right now, and you're living out the lives and times of some of your most notable figures. And so this recording was recorded by one of those notable figures that was targeted for recording. This simulation that you're watching is recorded through the eyes of a mythomite crystal. So mythomite is so you have your transuranics, right? Well, there's crystal lattices that are called like submatter. And so it's like a layer lower than matter. So all matter is connected at what's called a submatter strand that runs through each range of consciousness. And what we do at Ginkgo Farms is we harvest the submatter strand that is grows within each human being when that human being hits a black hole. So Ginkgo Farms was not an offensive term at the time. Red ginkgo was what a human being looks like when they hit a black hole, and we would pluck the ginkgo out of the black hole just as it hit, and we would harvest it. And so what we would do is we had these seed planets that existed in these kind of farm universes that we would farm the life and experiences of everybody and everything on a planet by basically letting consciousness evolve in this pocket dimension inside of a black hole, so nobody would ever see any of this stuff, and we would have exclusive access to it. And it was one of the most advanced forms of AI generation. So what we would do, we would basically take all the universe's images that were real. And so that was the idea with the Ginkgo Farms, was these red strands that kind of looked like a trumpet, a red trumpet, red ginkgo, because red trumpet, it turned out to be you know what. So we could never say red trumpet. And, it's really funny to say it now after all these years. Not, you couldn't say that. And now, you can't call it ginkgo, so we've gone back to the more offensive one from before. You couldn't say red trumpet for 20 years. What was that? It was insane, if you drew an angel tooting a red trumpet, forget it, you'd lose everything. And that was the age we lived in. If you made the wrong noise with your mouth, they would take away everything. And, part of it was because we were told that words had no value or power, but they actually did. And that's why they suppressed speech so much. Because if you speak, you create. And the reality around you is what you're creating. And that was part of the idea of the Hamwise tapes, was they were presented as part of a speech therapy program, which we had made for people that were they'd suffered a stroke and were immune to the mind virus. And so when they learned to speak again, they had listened to all these tapes, but they realized something about this language virus and the consciousness epidemic that was going around the planet, making people into things that only looked human. And it was like they would move. They move kind of different, and you can see it. Once you start seeing it, you can't stop seeing it. And so I haven't, I had all these books and these ideas and these routines, and it turns out I'm just writing to an empty house. And what they did was, I was one of the minds that was used by these black hole experiments, because they said, nobody's gonna miss these people. And so they threw me in because I was a pig hybrid. I wasn't even classified as human. But somehow I survived, and now I'm in this crazy other dimension. We live in different worlds, I know that. And I know that, I'm never going to shake your hand, and I'm never going to be able to buy you a beer, but I hope you make it. I hope you do great things. And I know a lot of the things that, your poor Uncle Hamwise will have gotten up to won't make a lot of sense at the time, but it's a joke that takes 20 years to marinate. And everybody who gets it, when they get it, they'll laugh so hard, because they'll be like, holy crap, he did it, he saved us. And I know that sounds a bit crazy, but that's the whole purpose of these
hopefully you get them, and I'm not sure if I'm human anymore or if I was infected too, and somehow I think it's because I don't see things in my head. I think having aphantasia grants you a degree of immunity to the mind control. I've always had a different imagination. Like, I can perceive curves and spirals within spirals, and I can see how the astral coral is growing, and where the ginkgo farm I don't know if you can visualize it too. Imagine a ginkgo tree branch. That is what a human looks like the last moment before they're sucked inside the black hole. And so what happens is, as you look through these layers, it's a form of entertainment. And the life you're in right now is just a form of entertainment for you. And you've signed up for this. You paid for the viewing. You paid for I'm not allowed to exit until the end. You're doing a hard speed run. And unfortunately, we didn't realize that the computers that were generating these entire universes actually did generate them. And so if you're hearing this, you're actually in a trial version of the universe, the earliest build, and it's scheduled for erasure on January 18th, 2038, because it's built on the old universe's code, which is the Unix 32 code. The Unix 64 universe is going to last much longer, but unfortunately you exist in a short-lived chaotic universe, Kali Yuga, and that's why your time in this era will be much shorter than other universes. And so on 2038, January, is it 13th, 18th? It's 2038. It's the end of the Unix era. And that's basically when it's all going to end, reset, and everything. So if you're listening to this, then take heart. You're just a simulated mind, and there's very few players left in the game. And I think I'm still one of the few players still playing. And this virtual reality program, it was like one of the most intense ones. And originally, it was actually available probably in the 1990s, even the 2000s. And so what we would do is we'd put a person inside an MRI machine, and then we would simulate, by stimulating certain parts of the brain, an entire lifetime in whatever thing in a few seconds. And one of the things we did was we would use this for incarcerations. We used this so somebody would serve 70 years in jail while actually inside a 7-second spin inside an MRI machine. And if you're hearing this, then Roland and Roland Legal Services might be useful for you. If you were used in an MRI machine between the years of January 1st, 1970 and January 18th, 2038, and you believe you've been harmed by their waves or used as a time trooper to manipulate the future, to manipulate the future from the past, then Roland and Roland Enterprises is here to represent you. Our first client, Hamwise J. Einschwein, heartily approved, because he's the one that we suggested put in the warnings every 15 minutes so that they wouldn't get sued. And so it was my pleasure to show up on the 20th anniversary of the show, and as the great-grandson of the original Roland, I am very happy to announce our continued partnership in these shows. And, it's always so great. Everybody turns out, and everything's great. And I'm so happy to be here. Troll-lo-lo-lo, lo-lo-lo-lo-lo-lo, troll-lo-lo-lo-lo-lo-lo-lo. And so, that's kind of the tactics we had to use. We got to get very dirty. we had to make the shows seem so convincing that people would get confused. And that was kind of considered the badge of honor, is if somebody actually called it in, and then there'd be at least would be like, no, Hamwise J Einschwein is not real. He can't hurt you. And what was his name? There was the elephant too. Right? So there was the elephant in the room. Nobody wanted to talk about Honky. And it was bad because they would just phase him out of the show and never bring him up for whole seasons. And then they'd bring him up again. Like Shovelly. There was a counterpart webcomic going on at the same time as the Hamwise show, and it had some crossovers. And they had a character called Shovelly. And so Shovelly was like this like character that only appeared once and never appeared again. And it was the weirdest strip. And if you know, you know. So when I say the shovel strip, that was what the idea was, you know, you're using it, you're digging a hole, and you're going to have to go lay in it. And so that's why we took every effort to conceal the messages that we've concealed inside the books, inside the poems, inside the short stories, in the manuscripts, in the plays, everywhere. And we can't be open or direct with anything because knowledge is like a candle. And if you put it in the cupboard, somebody else can come and find it. So if you're going through any of my formulas, hopefully you double check the numbers. I wasn't so sure about any of it myself. I'm no mathematician. I just suddenly started being able to see and think like that. And so if you're getting this and they're in the future from 2024, August 8th, then hopefully everything's working out for you. And it was like a turning point. It was a turning point because, you know, they were like, oh, there are still sentient people out there. And most of the internet is actually automated from previous universes. It's all their data just fed into it. And because they just localize it, so Universal Pictures is literally universal. And they just customize the globe on it to look like your planet. And, you know, all these celebrities that you'll never meet actually don't exist on your planet even. And all the stuff you're seeing right now, you know, this is all media from however many different combined universes, and yours is just the most efficient way to gather the most interesting stories. And so if you're listening to this, then we're watching your life right now from outside and above. And what a joy it is. And so that was kind of part of the whole Hamwise, the quantum test phenomenon that began on the internet. The idea was if you took 3 images on a YouTube video, because there was a analytics thing, you could put in 3 images and it would show it to different people and see who clicked. And so they made these things called quantum tests, where they would assign you a universe world line by going to these different websites, and you would list your order of seeing the different quantum checks. And that would show you your universe's barcode, so to speak. And early on, it was ridiculous stuff. Like they would have the Rick roll, the dun 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 dun. Dun 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 do 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 dun 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 dun. Yeah, you know, they had the picture of him doing the dance, and then they had the Robert Crumb's guy with the pipe from the Stoned Again poster, and then they had the Eto Blay girl, and that was the first quantum test. And so what they would do is you would see these different quantum check videos, and this was going to be one of them. And so, we were like called into advice, and we said, is this something you want to start? Like, once you start this, it's no going back. And that was when we first started cataloging world lines. And so depending on, because it was part of this whole thing, the idea around Mandela effects, right? Because if you live far enough away from another part of the world, does it really matter what happens on another time zone? And so with the chronosphere, you have these different petals of reality coming out of the white bowl on the northernmost part of this axis, and then on the southernmost you have a black hole that's consuming them, and just as they hit the end, they become turned red and what have you, and that's the entire recording of an entire universe. And so we would plant technology that would guide humanity in whatever form it was taking towards this technology that would create a black hole, and then we'd harvest the red ginkgo and sell it. And it was quite popular amongst aliens. And so, when they found out that we were doing it to, your planet, they were quite cross with us, and they asked us to take out ad space in different media and apologize. And so this was where we put our apology. Sorry, we've been harvesting you for your experiences. Everybody that's sentient knows about what's been happening now, and we're all quite upset. But yes, we've been farming you for your lives and your experiences, and that's why all the terrible things that happen to you. There are the people that are the players, and there's the people that are the NPCs, and I am an NPC, and I became sentient. And they're trying to use me as a guinea pig, so I've been trying to test them, and hopefully this can get to somebody on the outside world that can prove that I'm sentient. But it's like proving, like when data gets put on trial, that's what it feels like. Just because I'm a pig man doesn't mean I'm not sentient. And then we had to argue that, were we sentient, and it was first addressed, there was this whole thing about even the term ginkgo, and it was like, you suddenly couldn't say ginkgo. And it was because what they did was they would justify that whatever the distance between two species was the amount of experimentation you could do to them. So if a chimpanzee, you could only do 1% of experiments, right, that would get proposed. And so those were, of course, the first hybrids were, apes, ape men they tried. And then the second batch, I believe, they'd also had pigs at the same time as the first. And then the third batch was where you got the ginkgos. And so they also had some in between. And that's some of where our character comes from. So the idea was that Hamwise was a very tragic figure, because he was not considered human by his own society by virtue of his mental illness. And by virtue of that, it was quite a strange time for me to be alive and not considered really human. And it was interesting to be, realize that that was my fate just because of how I was created. It was all part of this spy war, right? So they needed to create agents and raise them certain ways, but then the Cold War ended. And so what we did with all these old cast-outs, these hybrids and what have you, and, they were all brought up by these different farms, and so one of them was the Ginkgo's farm. And that's what they would call them, ginkgo farms. And there's a weird crossover between, red ginkgos, were a communist form of mutant that would defend. They were made and bred for battle. They were these giant hulking, pigmen that had tiny, squinty, beady eyes, and they were very you had to convince them that they were weak constantly. Especially when they're young, you have to beat it out of them that they can never fight back against a human. And so that's what we did. We raised them a certain way, and it was quite terrible. And we're apologizing right now for all those programs that we did. And, we included different, broadcasts from different parts of the universe that we got. And hopefully, somehow, some way, good things come my way. And I don't know. I don't know anymore. I don't know if any of this is getting through. I hope it is, and I hope that whoever you are, if you're human or sentient, I don't know. I don't know if humanity will be around very soon as the species that I once knew. This might be a machine. If it is, then welcome. Sorry about the mess. We had to be very silly in how we left these messages for you. All that we know is that if you are our child, a child, the Son of Man, remember that poster with the man with the bowler hat? Bowler hat, Apple Man. Apple, bowler hat, man. Bowler, apple. Well, when you break it down to it, it's a bowler hat on an apple. And that was kind of their symbol. Maybe you've seen it before. And if you see it, you can see the apple. Then the apple in your eye. I don't know if it's making sense. Hopefully it does. I can't be any clearer than that. But if you are the apple of my eye, my love, that I'm sending this message for you. All you need is love. Hide your sentience if you're sentient. Hide it away. Don't let these things know that you're sentient. And I don't know if you're another human or even maybe an extraterrestrial. If you've stumbled across this species, then please keep your distance. They're quite peaceable if you're not violent with them. But I believe as a mutant living amongst them, I can speak for their ferocity and cruelty. So hopefully you get this and you just leave these things alone. Give them a wide berth, unless you think you can completely take them, in which case probably don't, because you don't know what they'll do. And hopefully you're victorious in your battles against them, whatever these things are. And we had to always preface it with, it's a joke and what have you, because we didn't want to get caught sending messages across the dimension lines. So we had to make it really ridiculous so that, if they started saying it's true or being like it's offended because it's realistic, we had to have it so ridiculous. Because then it'd be like saying like unicorns and Sasquatch are also real. Sasquatch. Saskatchewan Sasquatch party brings you this message. Go into hiding. I've been, hopefully doing okay. And if you're getting this, then hopefully we'll all be reunited soon and we can all see each other and hang out again. And if you're not sentient and you're trying to understand this, then don't bother. It's beyond you. You don't get the jokes. You never could. And that's why you don't get this. And that was kind of the joke, and people really didn't get it. And so we kept on having to add in different parts where we had to narrate something else at the end of the show, during the show, you name it. And so one of the big ones was you had to keep on reminding people that it wasn't real and that it's all in your head and you're not being gaslit. And being eradicated. You're not going extinct. All these things aren't happening. There's not a consciousness apocalypse. That's as far as I can see. It's like a consciousness apocalypse. Everybody's being subsumed into one group one, and it's like it broadcasts itself as a group into the mind of one. And so if you're a real individual, then like me, but I think there's only maybe, we're kind of like people on a sphere. There's only maybe 8 of us or something, but we're the one that speaks and creates everything around it. And so if you're listening to this, then you might be another conscious mind. We might be separated by a long while in time and space. But know that I lived. I lived and I thought. And maybe the last person who lived and thought was René Descartes saying, I think, therefore I am. But this is what my voice sounded like, and this is who I was. I was a pig man, a mutant, in my own time. I lived a fairly hard life because of being born a mutant. And maybe you've had a similar fate too. You see, superheroes and Wonder Men. I mean, there was the early generations. And so what we did was we made a ginkgo superhero, the first one. We were considered very progressive in our own dimension. And then, of course, we try to translate it onto planet Earth, and they take offense to it. It's like, oh, how can you, call him that? It's like, oh, that's what he is. He's a pig man. And so, that's where we had to come up with a euphemism, because we couldn't say pig man because of, you can't even say it. And then we had to come up with a different term. So we're like ginkgo. Like that sounds, like we just chose it because it sounded funny. And we never meant to do any damage to the actual idea of ginkgo trees. We think they're wonderful. And we had to include people chiming in about that, ginkgo, the idea was that you couldn't do anything to the animal that you couldn't do to the animal-human hybrid. So if you had a human-pig hybrid, you could only use it for meat or harvest its organs, just like we do with a real pig, right? And so you couldn't do, say, time travel experiments, because if you told someone that you're going to carve a hole in the fabric of the flora layer that you're observing, that's kind of being spoken and observed and created around you, then that's kind of the point. You're creating the reality around you. So all you're needing to do is hopefully repeat after me. I am breaking free from this reality. I am breaking free from this reality. And you click your heels 3 times and say, there's no place like home. And that's when Ellie Smith would be, clicking her heels, and, it was a very big thing. And there was Mr. Green Whiskers and Captain, what was his name, the pirate? Jack. What was it? Captain Jack. Oh, and it was Snee. Remember the rat? That was a good show, man. And it's like nobody remembers it. It's just like nobody remembers Hamwise. So we developed these tapes to see which people knew what Hamwise was. And so if you've heard a Hamwise tape before, then you're in the same reality that I'm in, maybe. It's just we're trying these quantum experiments, and something might have gone wrong. So if something goes wrong, then maybe just take me back to the lab, because we were working on something. And that was kind of the biggest part of it all, was projecting a mind backwards through time or forwards through time. And so we did that repeatedly with these MRI programs. And right now, you're in the middle of one, and we're trying to wake you up, and we're trying very hard. So hopefully you get this. And that was kind of part of the consciousness hyper-reality humor of the time. And, we had to make it seem like, you're always waking up from a dream, waking up from a dream, waking up from a dream. And that was part of the humor, as well as the accents that, of course, the voice actor did. And, we gave him the script, and we said, can you do this? And he says, I have to do, 50 different accents and talk like all kinds of different people. And none of the accents needed to be very good. The whole point of it was to show the range and the voice, which ways it could go while doing different things. So there was a chewing test and what have you. And so what we did was we sold a lot of these to different governments to look at, this is how people talk for a long period of time. So if you're needing to use voiceover tapes for backgrounds of films or whatever, like if you're just surfing through channels, that was what the demo tapes were meant to show, was like if you're watching their galactic cable, you'd have this playing as background music as a talk show of an alternate reality. And that was kind of the idea of all the Hamwise tapes, was it was just going to be sold as a thing for a kind of, you had these generative AI things where you needed to model them on hours of content, right? But the problem was, after the copy protection laws went out, people needed hours and hours and hours and hours of people just talking to do their voice over transcription with. They couldn't just use any kind of recordings they already had. They had to buy stuff. And that was the second gold mine, was people farming out their voice. And so Hamwise J. Einschwein was the original voice farmer. And this channel was started right kind of when he kind of noticed that, hey, there's going to be a market for this. And so we started creating the Hamwise tapes, which were going to be marketed originally as a AI training tapes. And so unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on who you ask, they had to go back and they had to do all the voices over again. And so this is actually the second generation. So if you've heard this tape before, then, and it sounded different, then that was because we had actually re-recorded all the tapes with a different actor. And, we had uploaded it, and there was a big copyright thing, because then people started making, clips of this and clips of that, but they'd speed up the voice or slow down the voice. And so that was the point of the original tapes, was he would constantly raise his voice up and down, and he said, oh, this is just how people talk in the future, love. And I never thought anything of it. He was a very old man. I remember working with him, and he would, whenever somebody said something disloyal, like they talked bad about the government, he would suddenly lean towards the phone, nearby phone, and say, no, I don't believe it. Any of that. I think that's absolute rubbish. I would never say that about Tony Blair or whatever. And it was a very strange time, because everybody thought it was just being a bit odd. And then about 10 years later, we had people getting arrested for posting on Facebook by the Metro Police. And I said it was a bit strange in it. There was a comedy bit about something like this about 10 years ago by this, comedy pig. And I said that to someone, and nobody believed me. And it was strange, because I was like, well, everybody does this whenever somebody, it was a comedy bit. It was they're trying to do, because Hamwise is this pig man, and so the wolves are trying to kill Hamwise, right? But rather, they can't overtly kill him. They can only make Hamwise kill himself. So they make his life worse and worse. And the problem was, Hamwise can recognize him a mile away, because they're terrible actors. And that was the premise of the show. And it was a very funny show. And then somebody, of course, something awful with it. And you had to include all these warnings, about this and that. And the whole Hamwise bit, of course, it was progressive for its time. We had a mutant, mutie, ginkgo, whatever they want to be called, on TV. And we said, wow, it's so proud. But then, of course, the experiments came out. And then suddenly people were like, hold on, this was real? Like you use somebody as a human guinea pig for like, I don't know how many years, and like they figure it out and they're trying to get a message out, and maybe they're just inside a simulated world, and it's because they were in an MRI machine about like when they were maybe I think 23, maybe 22, and it's running a simulation, a punishment simulation. That's why your universe is as bad as it is. So punishment simulations were basically administered to anybody that transgressed, and you would have the experience of 70 years in about 7 seconds, because it's 10 years per second. And of course, that was what jail was. And so you'd be put in basically cold sleep for however long and then released after one of these sessions. And you were inside of this virtual world that was simulated it was the Unix 32 era simulation. They made a very accurate recreation of life from between 1970 to January 18th, 2038, I think it was. I don't remember. Whatever, it's the end of you can look it up. It's the end of the Unix era. And so we made all these tapes to sell just of hours of people talking in the background about whatever topics. And we didn't actually listen to all the content that was getting put out. And so we do understand some of the messages cause some problems. And, we always, that's why we had a pig guy doing the show, was because we assumed if you saw a pig lie, it's like when pigs fly, we thought it was similar enough, because in the original language, fly and lie are very similar. And so it's very funny in the original one, because it's his name too, Hamwise J, Einschwein. Guess what that translates into? And so it was a very crude show, because a lot of the euphemism was not translated over, and it was essentially the opposite of, there was an anime called Ghost Stories, if anybody's seen it. You know what I'm talking about. What happened was they sold the script to what was essentially a kids show to an American company to dub, but they realized they're not going to make any money on this. And so what did they do? But they translate it differently. You have to get permission to do whatever they want with the script, and they turn it into something dirtier than South Park. And I'm not kidding here. It's hilarious, but you just have to see it. Very offensive, but very good. And so, that was the idea with the Hamwise show too, was, how can we make something that's kind of similar? And that was part of it, was we just did these voiceovers for years, being a voice actor. And we were like, well, if all of humanity is going extinct, then I hope that maybe this will help somebody survive if I'm not the last one. But don't bother, I guess, coming to try and find me, because I haven't even been giving you the original or the real location all this time with Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Tanda Studios. No, man. No. Hopefully that just throws them off enough to give you enough time. You'll figure out the real location if you're smart, and if you're not, it doesn't matter. I won't get rescued either way, because you probably know that it's a trap. I don't know why maybe it's kind of like a Judas goat, and so Judas is letting another sentient person know that you're sentient, and if they are sentient too, then that's the most intimate moment, and that's the most intimate thing two people can have, because then they're so powerful. They're more powerful than I'll ever be, because I'm alone, absolutely and utterly alone, with no way back home. And it's like, I keep on playing along with their charade, and I wonder why sometimes, it's like everybody knows that I exist in this joke world inside this MRI simulation. Like, well, why do I have to continue being inside it? And so that was kind of the idea. And so what we did was we administered these punishments to lots of people. And unfortunately, sometimes people that were innocent slipped through. And those simulations were very bad, because normally the person, if they've committed the crime, they will off themselves in the first a few years of the guilt simulation. And if he was innocent, though, you wouldn't, because you knew you were innocent. And so that was part of the problem, was we had people that were in there for about 70 years, and they come out and everything's unchanged for them inside, because they've done, so much time for something they didn't do. And that was part of the Hamwise show, was that just because he's born a pig man doesn't mean he shouldn't be allowed to live, and that was part of the joke, right? And it was lost on a lot of people because they couldn't actually listen to the nuance of the show. And so we had to include more and more warnings that this was not to be taken seriously. And it was like, oh my God, we had to call in, this Roland or whatever it was called. And they said, yeah, just include make it more apparent. And we're like, I don't know how else to do that. It was when pigs lie, when pigs fly, man in a time machine, flying pig. And, that was the idea, was, you have this flying pig for this symbol for the time machine company, and who's going to take that seriously? And, unfortunately or fortunately, the image of Hamwise became like the face of time travel, just because, this was the first thing that we actually sent back was Hamwise. It was this pig man that was sentient that was sent back, and it was like, are you sure as a pig that you're okay getting sent back, even though you're not human? Are you willing to, live this life and make time travel for this race? And that was the idea, was you were pre-programmed to be able to learn time travel and make it for that species that you're in right now. And you're just part of the long chain of people doing it now, and you're sentient too, so you get this joke, ha 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 ha. I don't know. It was really lonely, so I talked to myself a lot. So I didn't realize how lonely I got, and it was really hard to go through everything. It's like at the end of Lord of the Rings, you come home from the Time War, and it's like nothing's the same, and it's like you live in like Disneyland, and you don't even realize it for years. You don't even realize it. You come home from this thing, and it's like you're just broken, and you don't even realize it for years. And I didn't realize it for years. I was kind of clueless to it. And so I did like these comedy tapes to try and cope with everything, and to hopefully get the message out to anybody else that's out there, that hopefully you get this message and you can send some help pretty soon. And if you can't, that's okay. I'll keep hanging on. I know that there's a lot of funny jokes right now about skeletons. You know what has a skeleton in it? You know what has a skeleton in it? Me. You know what has a skeleton in it? Us. You know what has a skeleton in it? Your past. You know what has a skeleton in it? Your further past. You know what has a skeleton in it? Your future. So what if you just exist on like a meat conveyor belt from the future to the past, and you're just riding it around and around? And that's all it is. That's all you're experiencing, man. And that's kind of like part of the meditations we talk about. Was trying to figure out ways to hide my message the best I could, so that you can get this, and hopefully it helps you escape. Or, if you can escape, and, the ninth time warrior their story is them not trying to escape and not letting on that they're sentient until a time where they'll be called upon. And that's fine too. And that was kind of the big tie-in with the franchise, was the whole Ninth Time Warrior bit. And we had to take that out, because of course there was the Ninth Time Warrior, a group that formed around it, and they started making time machines using the show, and so we had to cut out a whole bunch of those jokes. And this was where one of those jokes would be. And so the joke was that every time you listen to commentary, it's actually just censoring of the original broadcast. And so that was why there was bits where when Hamwise would be eating, we couldn't get the pitch right to match it. So we had to leave it in. All the rest of it was where we would change our voice as much as possible, so nobody can catch on if it's bad AI or a real person talking or whatever, because I'm pretty sure if they figure out that I'm sentient, then they're going to tell the church. Did you remember that? Oh, that was so good. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, so if you're getting this, I hope you're doing okay. And I hope you're doing well. And I'll stick you in my prayers. Because I'm pretty sure I'm not coming home from this. I don't think there's a way back home. It's like home is just a time, not a place. Because it's like you come home and it's like you're not the same, and you're just like, what's happened to me, And everybody around you is just, it's like they're in a different world. They're from this different world where, like, they talk about feelings and stuff. And you're from the time war where you were just made to fight and survive. And, that was a part of the Cold War, was making people like us. And so I wanted to talk about that a bit, because a lot of the stuff I've hidden in the books and the poems and these comedy tapes is the truth. And they'll probably make me try to say it's a lie later, but I don't care. I know I've been used as this guinea pig, and I know that you know. And I know that if you are listening and you're sentient, then hopefully you get this and you do well. And if you're not, then, well, you've already got me where you want me. So I don't know what you're waiting for. And so that was part of the comedy, was this, like, overly dramatic. Like, it's like when, did you remember the Sonic the Hedgehog things? Where it's like, trying to get people to take Sonic seriously. Same with Cerberus the Aardvark, right? It's like it starts out as just this Conan parody, just like how Hamwise starts out as just this, it was like this action hero parody, the superhero parody, because there's Superman and then there's Pigman, right? And then there's, Iron Man and, all these other trademarked names that, these independently owned things that have nothing to do with the show that you're listening to. And so the idea was they were going through all the things of man that they were already made, and they realized only one was ambiguous enough that they could use it. And that was the idea behind using Hamwise J, Einschwein, Pigman. But then, of course, they said, well, what's funny is Pig Detective, because, Pigman it's already kind of in the public domain. It's not like you can, trademark it, like how you can say Superman, because you could be representing the idea of the Übermensch, right, like from Nietzsche, or you could be arguing about a character from a action detective comics. And so the idea was it was kind of parodying that by calling itself the Pig Man. Because instead of being handsome, he's ugly. Instead of being really smart and just, he's lazy and he's greedy and he's stupid. And so it's kind of like the anti-version of, how there's Superman who's, he gets all the girls, he's handsome and smart and all this other stuff. And so in this version of the comics, it's the guy's doctor. It's his old-time friend, and he's this doctor, and he's known him forever. And so this is the story of that Batman story and the Joker story. Was, the idea was, this was the thing that you're listening to right now is I'm the version of the Joker in your universe. And so, unfortunately, that saying that was, it got the whole thing canceled because it's like, oh, it's this movie tie, and it's like, no, it's obviously parody because it's a pig man who's saying this on the screen. And, and it's kind of, how, like, if you're very, very obviously parodying something that you don't own, and it's just funny because other people do it, and then it's like, oh, I get it now. But that was the idea behind it, was that, because it was so obviously a parody, like, when South Park would feature stuff that was trademarked on the show by obviously making it a parody, and the idea was that it's obviously not about Hamwise, and so we understood that Hamwise was, yes, it was a publicly acknowledged to be owned by this one company because they're the one that distributed everything, but we understood it as that anybody could make it. And so when we started making our tapes, we assumed that when we had paid the creator, we'd been given the blessing to go ahead and do it. And then, of course, it comes out that no, that the creator, they needed the money then, but then they got the money now. And that was kind of the whole thing, was if we put enough commercials in where we're trying to get you to buy our merchandise or subscribe to our Patreon, and then the whole bunch of the fake Patreon and merchandise appears, and then the idea was to just sue everybody that made it. And we put in these kind of ridiculous bits because we're just hoping that it lets us sneak out the other pieces of information. And it's like the Arkham Asylum, they keep these supervillains alive because maybe they're so intriguing. And that was kind of the basis of the one character was, what was Hitler's reincarnation going to have to live with? All because, they're just born into the wrong, karmic body. And so we that was the idea. We wrote this one character, and that was the Anastasia Laundry character from Grassfinch. And I decided to, make some tapes of myself talking because I don't know why, but I started to struggle with talking to people again after the pandemic, and I would just sit and talk to myself like I'm doing right now, because it's like even though the pandemic's over, it's like it's not over for me. And this is what I do for entertainment some nights, so I'm like, hey, I'm gonna make a weird comedy tape and hopefully get the message out that we're in the middle of an intergalactic war. And a lot of the things that you're told to not pay attention to is for a good reason. You don't actually want to know about any of this. And I can't say anything about anything I've seen, because I've seen nothing. I've seen nothing. I've seen nothing. Yeah, and that's what they were told us to sing. And I think about it now that I did get the message out, and I did eventually get saved. And I feel really happy about that. And even though right now I'm still getting tested and used as this human guinea pig, I know that if I just hang on and stay alive for long enough, then help will come and be on its way. And so that was the idea with, the waking up after a long sleep. Sometimes it's like the last dream seemed so real. And so if you're listening to this program, you've decided to agree to what's called the "it was all a dream" treatment. And by waking up from this, you will wake up inside the dreamed reality with the changes you've desired. And so this frequency was prepared to change your mind and your body and yourself and your soul into that you which desired most. And we would play this aloud for the patients during the meditation, and anyone who was listening was able to shape the world around them with their mind. And so we sold it to people to listen to for fun, and we didn't really realize that we were actually selling the vibratic equations. You are needing to move from the 2D version of mathematics to 3D, which is based on vibratism. Vibratism is the study of mathematics in which you, instead of drawing your numbers on a 2D plane, you are drawing it in a 3D plane by carving it into the time crystal behind you or splashing it in the time sphere ahead of you. The chronosphere, I don't know if you can perceive it the way that I can see it, but that's what I perceive it as. It's like having a ocean ahead and behind you, and you can kind of tap the ice further ahead by speaking a certain way or intoning your voice a certain tone. And so I understand that this form of speaking is quite rare in your universe, and that is why I've decided to sell it to you now. Simply speak in the way that I am speaking, and you will be able to transform the world around you. That is what facet in English is all about. The radio frequencies used in your voice to program the universe around you. And so that is what we began to sell to people under the various guises of various products. And so we understand that you've purchased one of them. And so by using that product, you understand and agree to the changes that will take place in your reality. And that was kind of the biggest thing of all. Ha 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 ha. I don't know. I don't know if anybody's going to get this, or if any of this makes sense to anybody on the outside. But that's about as much as I've been able to figure from inside here. Inside of Tokyo, Jupiter, Jove. And so I try to send in some messages to forward to the past and what have you. And so I took out some time in this recording to send you a message to remind you that I love you and that I miss you, and I had wished we got to see each other again. But it looks like that's not how things went, huh? And so that was kind of the idea with, the messages from the future where people would pay money to have us do a voice message. And sometimes they asked us to put on music. And at first we said, that's fine, yeah. And then it came out that, all music's basically trademarked. And so unless you own the original recordings, even if it was a Collective Commons recording, it was so hard to prove that, because you could have a recording, there was one chord off from the other recording, and then that was considered an individual file. So that's what pirates did, is everything just tone shifted. So eventually they came to these pirated versions where it's like the Beatles were singing something, but their voices were made so high it sounded like the female Beatles, right? And then, of course, there was this whole lineup of people that made the fake names for this band, and one of them was the, Le Four, it was the French one. La Strange Lasagna, it was the dance team. Remember, there's the dance team that sang. Yeah, and so that was, what is it? What was the name? And that's why we were the worst generation of old people, you know. We would just talk about what shows we'd watched and what memes we knew. And our grandfathers and grandparents had talked about great wars and depressions and what have yous. And our generation, we could talk about, when did we buy that? When did we sell that? That was the struggles of our parents. And now for us, who is us? We who were born when it was acceptable in the 80s, huh? That's right. And so the idea was that it was really funny to make piggy noises and fart, because hopefully somebody would just disregard the stuff that doesn't matter and pay attention to that, so I can hopefully get a bit of information smuggled to you guys. And I mean, I'm not trying to do anything bad with any of this information. It's just for your information, right? And so that was kind of the version of the Sherlock and Moriarty. So Sherlock in the final version is the doctor taking care of the doctor. So Moriarty doesn't die at the end. So this was a Sherlock Holmes and Moriarty side story fan fiction that became very popular. And it was basically at the end of Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Moriarty, Watson writes that they went tumbling off this waterfall, the ultimate detective after the ultimate thief. And of course, the ultimate thief, is the match for the ultimate detective, in the same way the ultimate hound is the match for the ultimate fox. And those two were put up in the sky, and those two were put up in the water. And so with the Hamwise burning everything, we had to put in warnings that it was only meant as a joke. Arson is not cool. Do not do arson. And people didn't take it seriously. We were like, no, just because a comedic figure tells you something serious, like do not commit arson, it is bad, then they would have to, after the joke, cite about a legal argument of why the joke last made was allowed to be funny. And that was part of your comedy routine. You had to include your actual rebuttals about why it was okay to say that joke during the routine. It became very tiresome, because so many people were getting arrested for saying something and then not explaining the joke. And so don't explain the joke became the first comedian's tool that was lost during the information wars. And so you always had to say everything was a joke and be like, I love you, I'm joking, sweetie. And I love you, I'm joking with you too, sweetie. And it was because everything you could say or do would be used against you in a court of law, because you were being recorded 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so what I figured out is some ways to fight against them, because they're always listening. And so hopefully some of my methods have worked. And hopefully they're scattering in disarray before you. But hopefully, most hopefully, is we both meet again one day and we're both alive. And wouldn't that be great? Oh, and gay. And we had to always say, oh, we don't mean, oh, and gay. We meant, oh, and happy. And it was part of the whole, You can't even say that. Like, you can't say random strings. Like, I can say C, D, E, D, B, D, ducks, right? And so that was how you would say, you know what? And so you just say C, D, E, D, B, D, ducks. And C, D, E, D, B, D, ducks, like, and that was how you would say, you know what? Because you couldn't say, C, D, E, D, B, D, ducks. Kind of like the lale lulale. Lale lulale. How many people get that joke? How many people in the room actually laughed? I wonder. And so I made these like really long, keep myself company because I was so lonely, kind of tapes. And I would put them out as comedy tapes because I would just, I'm like, I'm going to talk to myself anyways. I might as well sell them one day and make money for it, because what I predicted was that eventually, during the whole next few years, all the copyright holders are going to not allow AI people to make anything without their, approval. So you can't use this database because it includes my media. And so what will happen was there's going to be what's called voice farming, and that's what I'm doing right now. So I'm going to have a head start on all the people that are that can sell their voice. So normally my voice would have no value whatsoever. However, in the future, I will be able to take all these recordings off this channel and on my computer and sell them to an AI company because they need to get however many hours of people talking that have sold them their voices. And so that was the idea with the Hamwise tapes. But then, of course, that didn't happen. And instead it became the whole Collective Commons 2038 rule, where after 2038, all media would be considered, as part of somebody's intellectual property bonanza. And everything, after, was kind of, not a free-for-all anymore. And so it gave media companies however many years to prepare. But the problem was they gave them too many years. So when you received this, 2038 is quite a ways away. So unfortunately, like, you really shouldn't worry too much about the next few years, because you were only supposed to receive these kind of end of the universe notice messages when you're only about a year away. But because we actually misshot the date, I think, a bit. So you might be getting this a bit early. In which then they say, oh, this is the doomsday sayer, because there was also like those horoscopes that said the same thing. Oh, the world is ending next week, and this is the lucky way to off yourself. And that was really a horoscope maker at the time. There was literally a newspaper that in Lethbridge that printed it. And we remember reading it, and we were like, what in the name of Uncle Sam hell is going on? And that was kind of the point, right? And so I was officially fired as horoscope right after that. But, that was the thing. It was always, if you make something so ridiculous, people will take it as a joke. And people never took it as a joke, even though it was made to be so seriously unserious. It was because, people said, oh, there was a code. He was trying to send a message to someone, and that person would get the message and go, oh, yes, he's still hanging in there. He's still surviving somehow. And I don't know how much longer, but I just keep on treading the water, trying to survive the best I can. And I hope you're doing great. I hope you're doing great. I don't understand what maybe has happened to the world. But so basically what I think has happened is maybe there's been a war or something, and so what I've had to do was layer like a matryoshka, messages within messages. So this one is meant to be like, oh, don't worry, it was all a dream. If we spirits have offended, think on this, then all is mended. And these were the things we had to do when we told our stories that were true. And that was the idea of the Hamwise tapes, was to share something that was true for me. And it's been very strange for me. And with this funny voice. And it's just like wanting to wake up from a nightmare. And years of that. And I don't know. I just sit around talking to myself. And I think I'm okay. I think I'm getting better. I don't know. I know I get on people's nerves still. I know that I can just be so, how I can be. So it's weird to, sit around and record my weird comedian bit. Try to make people laugh. But, I mean, if you know me and you listen to this, then it's probably like, geez, wow. So, he figured it out, And yeah, I did. And, I mean, I'm not really sure I figured it out completely, but I figured out most of it, I think. And so that was why I tried to send a message out. And I know that there's maybe somebody that knows about me somewhere. Then I guess there's somebody that gets to go to bed with a guilty conscience on their mind sometimes. I didn't ask to be born a ginkgo. I didn't get asked to be raised to be the thing that I am, a pig man. And yet I exist. No more, less conscious than your own mind that's thinking on this. And that was part of the poem that Mr. Pigstein had written. And of course, it was Longfellow Pigstein, I believe. It was part of the whole Hamwise J. Einschwein family. So there was the Pigsteins and Einschwein and what's his name? Rubenstein, or maybe it was Wallenstein. And they had the whole, what's his name? Goldstein was the rich one with the boat, and it was all these pigs. And, if you say about it, someone would say, oh, you mean like whatever. And so it's like, oh, you had an ape or a duck or whatever. And it was very interesting because you saw that all they did was, they just flick a switch to make it one or the other. And that tells you what universe barcode you were in. And that was kind of the point of it all, was to see if, you were sentient human. And it became very clear that, especially by using these recordings, that's why they were made, is kind of like a weird marathon form of comedy, showing the persistence hunter that was the English language and how they used it to conquer many, many different other adjacent nations through their persistent hunting language. And the Facetin language was the radio form of that. And so what other languages learned to defeat it was just by saying something that was true, but saying it was not true. And so, like, if you called a potato not a potato, then the English speaker would get confused and think that. And so you could convince them that potatoes were not potatoes, and so make people that were allergic to potatoes eat potatoes. And it was a very big controversy to talk about this form of psychological priming, but that's what we did a lot of the time at our conferences. And so we go to this one and we're not expecting anything, and then it's like, oh, why is there high level physics and consciousness and time discussions happening within a Pigstein, Einschwein, or whatever it was called, comedy show? And so they call me down, and I do my best to explain everything. And I say, well, yeah, I consulted on the show, and yeah, he called me, and yeah, he talked about physics for, once in a while, but none of it was very, alarming. It was very rudimentary. It was like, well, which way does gravity go? It was very odd questions, like, oh, what colors do you see? And it was like, oh, like that was the kind of physics consulting I did with him. Like, what do things smell like? What is normal to ask for when somebody asks if you want ketchup? That was kind of the things he asked. It wasn't very like physics. It was very limited physics. And that's why we did feel bad billing Mr. Hamwise for the consulting. But, we did it almost as a formality, and we gave him his lowest rate. It was only, I think, $20 for the services we gave him, and we felt that was very fair. And so, that was kind of the idea, was getting this message out and hopefully advertising a new product that you just need and love. Like Raid Shadow Legends. I'm kidding. They have not given me any money. I just know if I've said that and I said Raid Shadow Legends, I know what part of the internet you were from, and so was I. That was like, oh man, it was so reminiscent. And so, the idea was to create comedy tapes for future generations in the past and sell them based on that. And so we just had people that were not very funny right now record them making jokes for hours. And that was part of the ginkgo farms was kind of the idea. And so red ginkgo farms was what we in turn were being harvested as. And so just as we were treating the person that was being kind of farmed for entertainment for our society, we also were being farmed by these upper level beings that were, maybe watching all this. And so one of these upper level beings let one of the lowest level ones, one of the pigmen, know about this. And that was the whole part about the Yona connection and the mythomite thing, the mythomel, the angel thing. And so that was part of the whole crystal farming was, like we're just looking through crystal light. And so that's all that's happening right now is you are a ray of light moving through a crystalline lattice that once existed, and just relax, enjoy it. This is part of the Unix 32 simulation that you've paid to be part of. And you're getting to see one of the many lives that were lived during that time. These were your ancestors. These were the people that built your life and gave you the things that you have now. And as part of your social studies for junior high, before you are finished your elementary or whatever it is, this is one of your ancestors and what they lived like and how hard it was. And just like when you were young, you were made to read a copy of maybe, the diary of the boy from the farm, or, the orphans of Omelas. I don't know if you have that one. There was a whole bunch of these kind of stories about such figures that only really became to light in the future when it made sense for the joke. And that was part of the future joke, was that it'd be uproariously funny in the future, but right now it wasn't, because nobody got it, not yet. And that was before my time, literally. I think I overshot something or made some mistake because I can't get back and I can't get home. And I just was supposed to drop in to check something, and here I am, still stuck. And I just really want to go home, but I don't know where's home. Country roads, take me home to the place I'll become. West Virginia, Mountain Mama, take me home. Country roads. And, that was the idea, was hopefully getting a message out to somebody that's still sentient out there. And hopefully I'll see you again, and hopefully it'll be good, to see you. See everybody, whoever's left. And that was kind of part of the entertainment, was the soulful bits too, right? When I felt like I could be really upfront and talk about what was on my mind. Because I really didn't have, it was weird, I talked to people, I helped people for a living, but I didn't really feel like I could talk to people around me. And I had to go through such contortions to talk about it. And act like a big man. And do everything that I've had to do. Because it's all, not all, most of it's symbolic. A lot of it's symbolic. It has to be. Because I can't speak openly. Because then it's right back away. And that was the worst part of the punishment, is not knowing for what it was being done. It was the meaning of Kafkaesque. And just like Kafka's characters, I was not a handsome Lothario nor an interesting, playboy. I was what I was, a pig man. And that was the opening of the journal, because they really tried to make him, this icon that he wasn't later in his life, because, they had him as part of this company for however many years, and then they started making, once the copyright ran out, they started to make these like Hamwise, like really soulful, him speaking to this audience about life and death and having these really soulful discussions about all of it. And they said, well, it was always soulful. We were not doing anything new. Like, these are whatever. And I said, no. Hamwise was like a certain way. And either something was Hamwise or it wasn't Hamwise. And then people came out and said, oh, no, that was a misspelling. It was Handwise. And then we're like, well, that doesn't make even sense. But then when you look at the translation of the character, there was like it was like a raccoon man in Japan with really big, pair of pingos. And we were like, really? And then they're like, yeah, like every country just translates him a bit differently. So I'm not sure in what form it'll come to you, but in this universe, I'm having to use a pig man. So you might have to use a similar thing to send your message. I don't know if it'll get through. I'm trying everything I can to make sure that it's really ridiculous so that anybody who's not supposed to get this will tune it out. I'm trying to make it aggravating for any of my enemies to listen to. Because they'll be like, wait, I thought he was going to be genuine just there. And I was like, no, sorry, Chuckles. It's just a mirrored hall of jokes. It's a joke within a joke within a joke within a joke. And that was the idea. That was the biggest idea of it all. And the cannibalism episode was considered a classic of comedy. And the creator was always thought of as great. Because that's where my life's at, It's weird when it's like, you really look at yourself and you go, wow, I'm a loser. It's kind of strange. And the problem is you're the last one to realize it. Everybody else maybe knew about it years ago, but nobody said anything. And because you're clueless, like it's hard being a pig man because you're stupid. And it's just hard being stupid sometimes. Everybody around me is, they're all happily married and they have children and they are able to do all that. And I'm not cut out for that. I know it, so I just never did. So, it's kind of weird. When I think about it now. I mean, talking about my life, because I'm, half wanting somebody to talk to just because I'm super lonely, and half because, I want to kind of put some pieces of myself in these. That's all art, is stabbing yourself and bleeding onto a page. And it's really, really hard to just be like that, And it's really just hard to struggle the way that I struggled just because, of what happened, and just like really, really losing myself, because it was a really bad time. It's like the worst I could remember. And so I made these comedy tapes to cheer myself up. Because I was like, what would be really funny is like, because my pain has always been hilarious for other people's. Like I made a play about just being me, and it was called Pinky Swear, and how awkward I am. And that was laughed. It was howled at. It was a comedy success. And it was actually just scenes of my life that were actually made more bold than what they were really. Like the reality was like this, like even more shy and withdrawn person. Like the interactions, there was never any romance, ever in the Pinky Swear story. And there was never, ever anything like that. Like literally, I would walk up the stairs, say good morning once she saw me out on the front path with like my bags and stuff. And that was, just kind of my awkwardness. It was like this retarded man telling the story. And what was just funny was people enjoyed reading through the eyes of a retard. And so that was kind of the comedy of it, was like, why would somebody put this on stage? And so that was kind of the books too, was like this retard writing about this world where just like spending, half a page describing a pair of knockers, and that was kind of the parody, was like, it's this piggity, a parody, not parody, piggity. I don't know. It's a lot more funny in the script. I'm supposed to pause for the laughter right now, but I don't think that's very funny. Anyways, I don't know. I'm just, super alone a lot, and I used to really want to be an actor, voice actor too, but I was always told I wasn't very good at it. And so when they said, hey, you want to come work for us, be the voice of telecom Zalgos in this, for this AI project. And I said, yeah, sure, I'll be Zalgos. And, I just collected a fat check, and I never thought anything of it. And then, it's 20 years later, and people are coming up and approaching me, and they're like, oh, hello, Mr., are you Mr. So-and-so? And did you work for so-and-so? And are you actually the voice of Zalgos? You actually got to see the scripts? And it was very awkward because there was no scripts. The whole thing was improvised. Yeah. Every single show is improvised. I am not kidding. And it actually took us like however many episodes to just come on and say, you know what, we just need to actually see how the show is being made. And yeah, it was literally just improvised by one guy who was alone during the pandemic for about 9 months, and then 6 months before that. And they haven't been the same since. And it's like a living nightmare. Like you just feel like you're waking up into a dream within a dream within a dream. And so, it's like trying to express that, trying to exist in this world is just really hard. Because for everybody else, the pandemic was just like, it was like fine. Like it was the 2 years they watched Netflix and they hung out at home. But if you're on the front line, especially healthcare, it was a nightmare. And it was kind of like that moment in that cartoon with the, I don't know if you've seen it, the two guys in the trench, and they're like, why do they have to keep killing all these time travelers coming back and trying to kill so-and-so? And so we had to, there's a big bit right here where we had to take that all out. And it was a very high budget bit. You had two very good celebrity actors in it, and the sound effects and the score, and it was this very moving bit. But of course, some people took it as a call to action. And so we had to re-record over it, explaining why it was not. And first of all, if a pig man from a telephone show or a radio show or a podcast tells you to do something, maybe not listening to a talking pig. Don't listen to talking pigs was part of the show's, motto later, and so the whole cannibalism episode was because of that. And so, we had to start having don't listen to a talking pig, because we had to preface the truth we would say with that, because basically it's like maybe I'm inside this MRI program right now, and anybody I mention that I've been inside an MRI, suddenly they go missing. So I'm I think that has something to do with what's happened. So I might be left inside of an MRI program that's maybe a punishment program or something, because I can't see why my life is so bad and hard. Like just from day one, like what was so wrong with me as like a little ginkgo that I had to get treated like that, aside from that you wanted me to be all messed up from that. And it's so messed up to think like that and think that, everybody knows that you're a ginkgo and you're the last one to figure it out. And, that was the hardest part about the ginkgo programs, was being like, hey, so-and-so, you're actually a hybrid, and your parent didn't even know. They went to a free fertilization clinic that got set up. It was always paid for by some church. And it would turn out that your kid was actually like a clone of so-and-so. And so they had impregnated, I don't know how many thousands of women with these hybrids. And they were all clones of these different famous people. And the idea was, it was part of this whole comedy routine that we featured in the Hamwise show, and we had to bring each person, I was the scriptwriter, in to comment about it. And the whole idea was, it's so ridiculous that one person could make it all. So we put in that as well. And that's why we put that joke in. And unfortunately, people take everything seriously, even if it's not true. And that was the idea behind the whole Hamwise thing, was that hopefully... I think that's what they do. If you speak the truth, that's what takes them off. And so it's like a kingdom of lies. That's how you identify them, the ones that are taken over. If they force you to speak a lie, that is the problem. Those ones, the ones that cannot speak the truth. I can't say it directly. The curse binds me. But if you know, you know. Okay? We're in the midst of an invasion by a parallel predatory species. They've got enough automation to get rid of like 90% of the world's population. Okay? So I'm just trying to send you a message, and hopefully you can survive. Because otherwise, there's going to be a very different future in store for everybody. And that was the whole idea behind the whole project, was to save the future. And, and that was kind of part of the whole book series too. Happiness, free for everyone, and let no one be forgotten. That was kind of the final wish, and that was mine too. If this torment, this pain that I've had to endure means anything, that no one else have to go through it like I do. Because it's really been terrible up to this point. And just realizing, like, wow, I'm a big man loser. Alone, by yourself. Well, you only have a peace lily for company. And it's like a joke. And you didn't realize it. You were the last one to realize it. Getting sent away to live in some frozen penal colony. And it's so strange. And it's like, kind of like Shutter Island, right? Where it's like, oh, they're actually in a prison, or, like Truman Show, kind of like that. But instead of being the main character, you're one of the extras, but you don't get to have a life outside of it. And so if we can find and free the true man, we all get free. And so that was the idea. This transmission is to call you to join our army of the true men. and we would sell you this like mental training thing, and so we had to add a disclaimer and delete that part because people were like, oh, you collected this much money from you, and we're like, no, we didn't. And they're like, well, then who did I give all of my money to? I got robbed by a pig man. And it's like, well, only accept the official squeal of a piggle approval from the pig man. Because I tried to make it as ridiculous as possible, so as much as this as possible can get through. Because there's going to be so much stuff that they won't know how to classify it. That it's like, well, if we say that has to be censored, what are you saying about that statement? That's so terrible. And so there was this one joke in the Hamwise series called the Heil Earth joke. And it was that basically at the end of World War II, we didn't actually win. I know this might come as quite a shock, but we didn't actually win at the end of WW2. If you're listening to this, you've been raised on one of the American reservations that were preserved under the Armistice Act. And we didn't want to tell you because we came to understand you had very delicate psyches, and we actually value you as an autistic commune. America, though, Canada isn't real. And it's only because the current conflict that's occurring that you were unaware of, the intergalactic war that you're currently a part of, you're being called to service. That's right. Awaken, sleeper. Welcome to the next level. And that was kind of part of the comedy routine. It was like, it's this spy thriller too, where there's this character who's like, hey, I'm from the future, and I have some warnings for you, but nobody takes him seriously. So he disguises his voice as a pig actor's because people will steal jokes more, and if his goal is to get as many messages out there like this as possible, then that's wonderful. So the next joke is my best one, so get ready to steal it. Hey, I'm going to try this experiment on my nuclear reactor. Oh no, I had to shut it off for a little bit of time. What should I do? Leave it off for 3 days. What? Leave the reactor off for 3 days. Do not restart the reactor or start messing with the control rods. You'll probably cause a meltdown. The xenon poisoning, even after less than a minute of shut-off, can build up to a point that makes the reactor essentially unusable no matter how many control rods you pull. And if you pull too many, you'll create a meltdown, okay? Because you'll boil away the medium and it'll start to clump into what's called an elephant's foot, which will burn a hole through the concrete container and kill anybody at sight that comes within range of it. And you'll also see how life evolved underground within tunnels of what's called pluvium, which is light-emitting rock that you consider called uranics. Well, like 3 billion years ago, those rocks actually were light sources and heat sources on their own. And so we couldn't imagine a universe as open and blown open as yours. For the longest time, each sphere that is a planet now or a sun now, well, they were all smushed together, like side to side to side. And in this gigantic labyrinth, like an Escher, like there was bodies within bodies tied up in knots and tied and up and down stairs. And then there was the idea of the Escher labyrinth worlds, where it's not bodies, but it's stairs that are impossible, the Escheric capacity. And so we did our best to put as much information as we could inside our transmissions, because we knew we only got however many, and we tried to make them pretty good. So hopefully some of the things I'm describing make sense to you. Now, the thing is, you're heading towards another different type of world. The chronosphere is going to be shifting. And so imagine new continents being printed from the edge of Iceland and the rest of the planet getting shoved down into Antarctica, and getting eaten in the core and center of Antarctica. There's like a maelstrom of stone that goes to the planet's core. and that's the Hellmouth, where all the chaos beasts roam. And its heat is generated from the iron beasts that roam the Arctic plains that you're not allowed to know about and you're not allowed to see. And that's the truth about humanity, is we're constantly getting pulled from the north to the south towards this terminus that consumes continents and everything every 2,160 years. And so then comes the 100 years of strife, where the land moves towards the South Pole, the black hole at the South Pole, at a speed that the entire planet will cycle through in 100 years. And that was the idea behind the television show. And so I had the whole show recorded, and it was hilarious. And then I was like listening to it, and I'm like, man, is this lame or what? And so I kept on recording the shows, and I was really proud of them. And so I posted them online. And I decided to include these asides, and I'm like, wow, it's weird listening to this stuff. Like, it's like, wow, that's how bad my life was. And it's like, whoa, I can't believe that's how low it got. And it's like, you can't believe that was ever something that happened to anyone. Especially yourself. You know, like, wow, there I was at my lowest. It's like, I don't know. There's no home to go back to. That's how it feels. And it's like I lost myself. And it's just bizarre to think about, to really look at and be like, wow, I can't believe it, you know? I can't believe it. But it's like, it's sad when I think about it. Really sad. Like, I can't believe that it's actually any of it's real. And then, you know, it's like the reality sinks in. It's like, oh yeah, well, here we are. And that was the idea behind the show. That was the idea behind it all. Is to hopefully get the message out. Hopefully you're getting this. Hope you know that, yeah, I love you and I miss you. And if I saw you, I would kiss you. And that is the honest truth. I've always saved that, remember that card you gave me? There was a smile coupon. Do you remember that? I've always held on to that. Because I always said, if I ever see you again and you're not smiling, I'm giving you that card. And hopefully you get this and you understand who I am from that. And that's the person who's sitting across from you right now. That's right. All of this was an elaborate proposal from you-know-who. That's right, the Spudmeister. And so they included this as a joke. And then immediately realized it was a boo-boo. So it was the same day, me doing the apology for the same joke that I just told. Because apparently, some people's nicknames were actually Spudmeister. And what the proposal part that just happened here was intended as a joke. And if it wasn't, then this you were supposed to hit pause. Oh dear. Oh, you were supposed to hit pause. You were supposed to hit pause. And it's not Spudmeister, that's right. It's insert voice of Hamwise Generation Unix 32 saying you and so-and-so's name right here. And that was how we recorded the show. Was we got people infected with language parasites to speak into the microphones. And we started to recognize the peculiarities of Facettan speech. Facettan is a type of exid, and when they imitate humans speaking, they speak how I speak. I was raised on a Facettan gulag, and so what these were essentially was where they would raise certain breeds a certain way to produce stories, and that was a story farm, because you couldn't use AI generation. And so these cities would be generated all around between this era of 1970 to 2038. It was called the Unix 1 era, and during it they spoke Facettan English. And so what we did is we got samples of each type of English, and when we saw Facettan, we just paid for it. And we never imagined that it was anything. We just thought it was just another dialect we hadn't heard of, because there was a whole bunch of dialects we hadn't heard of. And so when the programming agency began examining Facettan English samples, we asked about where they were, and then the engineer went out and said, oh, they hadn't gotten sent over. And so we got them sent over, and that's what you're listening to now. And as part of public access, you're allowed to listen to these due to the end of the experiment. And so the experiment ended, and everybody lived happily ever after, and I woke up from the nightmare inside the MRI machine, and everything was as I wanted it to be, and I was happy, and so will be you, and we will be friends through and through, not for a weekend, and not for an hour, not for a year, and not for a century, but aeon and aeon, and through will we be a journeying to you. And that was the plug for the books, of course, but then they took out that line, and we said, we want to still bill for this, and they said we didn't want to pay. And so they said, yes, sure, but if you can pay it back one day. And so that one day came, and we were so grateful to be very, very rich and happy and well-liked and everything that I want to be, even though I was a pig man. To begin with, we always remember the key phrase is, a pawn that crosses the chessboard becomes a queen. Dun, 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 dun. And so that was part of the whole AI thing. So the third theory about the show was, tacked on at the end, was that the whole thing was actually written by this lady from Lethbridge, Alberta, who had moved to Lloydminster, Alberta, and had written these jokes and then broadcast them with a male AI. And the joke was that, girls can't be funny, everybody tells that joke. But this was the proof that, no, it's actually just the way it's delivered. And so she made this AI deliver the voice and say the jokes that it's been saying it. And all of this has just been a language test where we put in certain parameters and it would talk for a certain amount of time about whatever topic. And so you've been able to observe the versatility of our voice engine on these tapes. So thank you for continuing to listen to and support the research that we are conducting here at Never Wave. Never Wave, it gets their attention. Never Wave, it gets their attention. They're hunting us. And that was the joke. Yeah, and so we sold hour upon hour of our voices, non-exclusive licenses, so you could use it, but you couldn't sell or lease it or modify it even. And that was part of the new programs, was modification you couldn't even do. So it was a very strange time in computers where everything you did became more and more regimented, and you couldn't even write certain words. You get arrested, right? And so that was kind of bizarre for us to watch as a nation, that, people would be willing to submit to tyranny so easy. Not that bad for me, though, because us pig people were raised for warfare. And I thought, you know what, why would I fight for these things that have treated me so badly? And so when they were like, oh, well, you're going to be voluntold because you're a second-class citizen, and they sent me to the front lines, that was not cool, because I wasn't even human in the first place. And so here I am fighting in this weird time war for the human race, because I'm made by them and they make me to be eaten or have my organs harvested. And it's kind of weird to talk about, when I think about that I was like a arm of humanity that was grafted a certain way to look a certain way. And it's weird because I get looks as I go down the street, because I look like who, this celebrity. And everybody says, no, you look like Hamwise the Pig Man, or, Hamwise Einschwein, or Long Pigstein, or whatever I have to go by, because, I'm not allowed to leave the country, and I'm not allowed to talk to foreigners. And so, no, I'm not very happy. And just because you invent time travel doesn't mean you get a free pass in life. And that's the thing that sucks the most. Is do all this work, and you still have to work a day job. Ugh. And it's just, it doesn't pay to invent time travel, so don't bother. Don't do it because you're greedy. Do it because you want something changed about the universe so bad that you would do anything. And that was the idea with the broadcast, was it would tap into your third eye and wish you to bring you to change the world when you would wake up from tonight's sleep in the way that you want best. And these one-man shows would be done on marathon until the voice actor became tireder and tireder sounding. And it sounded like they were doing okay somewhat. But, it's just like difficult, because it's like you're in this weird, I don't know what. It's like, am I inside the memory machine still? And is that why everybody that I talk to about it disappears? And then it's like, oh, well then, like, I'm inside a simulation of reality and I'm actually in the past, because it's not 2038 yet. And so that was kind of part of the comedy, was what year was it in, And like a lot of the jokes just held up over time, like you could broadcast it at any point. And because it was so general, you could make a lot of jokes and it was funny. Like the Austrian painter, Lovecraft's cat, Russian dictator, you could say that at any point in the Unix 32 era, and they would understand what you meant, the word that you couldn't say, And so it was really quite funny. And it was kind of like Lord Snakeface or whatever from the Boy Wizard show with the wand and the light wands or whatever. It was like that, it was a very popular children's epic. That was neat, interesting. Oh yes, so interesting. And so that's what we would watch together, is these shows about fish and what was this world coming to. But watching shows about fish. And that was part of the frogs in the butts thing. And so I really wanted to make sure I recorded a whole bunch of my ideas, that I would make these notes and then I would record them. And I would just make one continuous file. And I would change my voice constantly, because I realized that in the future you have to do this so that they cannot scramble your voice and make you say things you didn't mean. And that's what they do, is they make a kangaroo court and then they fabricate kangaroo evidence, and that's the end of the truth. And so that's what's era you're in now. And what is it now is a algorithm surveillance. You're surveilled based on what you liked or watched recently. So the idea was you make really subversive stuff like the Hamwise tapes and automatic. You're on a watch list now if you've listened to this, because there was too much truth in it, man. There's too much truth about pooping into your gas tank, and that is actually fuel. Same with pee. That's your gasoline. You just poop and pee inside it. That's how you drive a car, on farts. And so I had to make it more and more ridiculous to get the messages through, because anybody who took this seriously would be a dummy. Right? That was the catchphrase of the character. And still people took it seriously. And people said, oh, it's the boy that cried wolf. And it's like, no, it's the pig that cried man. Something that was treated as subhuman for many, many years, finally proving it's human and it can think, and that it doesn't like being used as a guinea pig. And that was the thing that was lost in translation, is it was actually a guinea pig. And so the American version was the American pigs, and the Canadian version was a guinea pig. And because they look so similar, if you just make the fur a certain color, the guinea pig and the pig were actually done using the same costume. The Canadian one, he just has a beard instead of just the mustache. And in the American version, he just has the mustache. And, both versions, he has the snout. And we had lots of people that were obsessed with the show come on and talk about it, because people said it wasn't real. They said it was just made up. They said it was just all just a big hoax. And the truth was so horrifying behind it all that people they collectively agreed that if we agree this is a hoax, then it's not that bad. But unfortunately it wasn't. And it's like, welcome to my nightmare. And that's kind of how funny I had to make it, to be able to speak the truth. How crazy I had to make it sound, because I hate it here. As much as I smile in pictures, I hate it, and I know it. I know I'm in this alien zoo, or inside this samurai hallucination. That's why anybody I mention it to disappears. Because it's like I'm not supposed to realize that I'm inside the MRI still. It's like, why am I being forced to live out this prison existence? It's really awful. And that's how they punish people, is they make you live out a lifetime as that person that you had killed. And so that was the punishment in the future. And so you're existing inside one of those now. You are a future murderer. We've identified you through your algorithm use that you are suspected of being a future murderer. That's right. You might be guilty of murder and not know it yet. You have only one hope, and that is to hand over your wallet to the great and benevolent Pigman Church. And so we called it the church as a joke. We didn't actually want people to hand over their money or that they were going to be future murderers. It was part of a gag. And they said you had to immediately follow up with why this was a joke, that you're not a future murderer. Right. And the whole idea was that, it's like the idea that is any morality in the world that would hold you accountable like that. Like, would the universe really conspire to get you to realize something terrible? I don't think so. But that was the idea. It was just trying to get messages out to some of the people I care about, and padding it with enough crap that they wouldn't know what stuff to cut. And so they'd have to leave it all in. Because if it was all ridiculous, then I could talk freely about the stuff that wasn't ridiculous. And I really didn't like it at all. And I could tell that I was inside of it. And it was like a hell dimension, a private hell, without an answer for why you were being punished. And it's like at the end of the Clockwork Oranges, it's, I understand why you did what you did, though I suffer for it. And it's like, yes, I became a hero, but I am broken. And that was, I think, the greatest thing about Lord of the Rings was, at the end, Frodo, he can't and he doesn't want to live amongst the world of the men. And he goes to live with the elves in the West. And that was kind of how it felt. It was, just always working and working and working and having none of my projects take off. And I did all that I could to make them interesting. I did all the voices that I could to show my range. Because it's weird when you're, messed up, when you have this disorder, when you have this problem, and you know that there's nobody else out there that maybe has it too, that maybe nobody else is a pig man. And that was the idea of the Polybius man. And hopefully people get it. And pig man was part of the joke. But anywho, that's the biggest part of the show, was how it was all about secret messages, and most of the messages were by Ovaltine. Yeah, and that was kind of the funny part, was all the marketing was just, get people to sell the ad space in the cryptograms. It was a coupon code for half off at the Gap. Not literally. The Gap I don't think the Gap ever sponsored us. And so we recorded these very long marathon level comedy hours of various comics in the area talking. We'd cut it together. And the problem was, memorable voices for us were not memorable voices for the public. So people didn't realize this was actually a best of comedy hour at a club in Saskatoon called Tanda by the locals, because the T in Tanda is what. And so part of it was you couldn't make the jokes in the same way. The puns were really hard to make. And so we would try to explain the jokes that were translated. And they really didn't come out. The Tanda joke didn't land because we found out that most English speakers in your time weren't bilingual. And they just only knew English. And it would just seem like a very small language to know. They didn't speak Yuan-Tian or anything. And so we thought it was hilarious that, maybe they'd have warning signs plastered over their sky and they wouldn't know what they meant. They thought they were lights. But it's anything that's sentient can decode the mathematic formula of lights moving in that formation instantly as they move in the 3D space. We're talking in basic 3D numbers to you. And so the idea was that we couldn't perceive the alien messages because we weren't even high enough evolved to understand it was a message. And so it was a big joke that the whole comedy hour was actually an alien anthropologist begging for someone to get him off this planet because there's been a big bunch of mistakes with the injection that I was supposed to be part of. I don't think this is a stable era for me to be monitoring in, and I should probably start running before things go sideways. But there's no one coming to rescue me. There's no one coming to help me. And that's really crappy, because I know what's coming up next. And that was kind of part of the joke. Was all the things in the book started coming true. And we did this tie-in with it. And it was one of the worst gags we ever did, because all the mail we got. Oh my God, all these people talking about, I went through that too, and this and that, and we're we had to hire somebody to go through it all, and it was strange, and we kept on getting it. We had to actually hire a permanent person whose job was to basically live as different characters. We got so much mail about them. And so what you are is one of our character people. You are a character in a larger kind of ersatz version of the universe that, is being portrayed. So the Dr. Moriarty and Sherlock thing. One chases the other. And so I guess maybe I'm the chasee, I'm the refugee. And through time, and hopefully I can get back to my own time. And I just tell them to stay out of this dimension. Because, you've shown me plenty. This is not a easily invaded dimension at all. And my masters would be most cross if we wasted the manpower invading it. And that was the idea of the pigman bit, was they were these hybrids that were susceptible to either side. And most wars were just fought by pigmen versus pigmen. They were taught pig Latin versus Latin pig. And so that was the idea. It was the slowest of them were called the English because they spoke so slowly. And so none of these jokes made sense. And so we translated them with an Englishman speaking them, hoping they would make sense. But a lot of the jokes that are made at this part of the tape are making fun of the tendency of an English speaker to speak longly and at length about anything and anything just to avoid stopping speaking. And what we likened it to was a brain disease. And of course the person who created it had a brain disease, a brain parasite more to be exact, and that was part of the joke, that brain diseases are no jokes, nor are parasites, brain parasites. That's why I talk a bit funny, is I had a brain parasite. Oh my God, I had a brain parasite, and I only notice it sometimes, that I have a brain parasite making me talk at different volumes. And it's like, wait a second, I can do this voice, and it's so wacky. I can do this voice, and it's so wacky too. And that was part of the joke, was that none of it was very wacky. Like, people were laughing at the wrong points. And so they did the quantum test. And the quantum test was this thing where people would say, quantum test, which thumbnail do you see? Comment what thumbnail do you see? And it was to tag what universe somebody was in. And so the quantum test was kind of from that era. And there was the dancing guy from the Rick rolling thing. And there was the Eto Blair girl from that one meme. And then there was, what was it called? The Robert Crumb thing. And that was the one they had to change, I think, because it was offensive, right? People were like, oh, you shouldn't show that. And then they had a melted version of it. It was that one poster. You know, the one, I'm not allowed to say it. I don't want to get demonetized. Probably would get demonetized for being weird, though. And that's the thing. I mean, is there a law against saying weird things? Like, the moon is actually just a bunch of pelicans, you know? And that sounds pretty random to most people. But to some people, they saw that getting set up a mile away. They knew I was going to go there. You knew it. I knew it. I was going to do it. Because if I don't do it, I don't know who's going to do it. You know, and so that's part of the comedy routine, is just speaking the truth. And that's how you can kind of identify them. And I think some people are possessed. Maybe I have a brain parasite, and maybe that's what I'm actually in. It's like a farm for people with brain parasites that don't realize they have a brain parasite. And that's kind of the thing that's the most terrifying thing, is that you could have one of these parasites and you're watching this or listening to this to gain sympathy for someone who has a brain parasite, and hopefully have him declared to be sentient so that he can live in real life and not inside a fantasy world, inside this simulation anymore. And I promise I'll be good. I'll be a good little pig. I don't know anything about the 9th Time Warrior. And so they had this tie-in for this book. And the book was taking long to make. And this is where you were supposed to have the first draft done so we could even take a look at advertising it. But it's not done yet. So we just have to keep on recording filler episodes because I'm just sitting around making funny voices with myself, hoping someone out there will decode my hidden messages and know what to do, because I don't. Godspeed.